Let's start here. Results from Zimbabwe's general elections have started to trickle in. This after the country voted for the presidential polls on Wednesday and yesterday. By late yesterday, less than 10 of 210 parliamentary constituencies had results. Results in the presidential race are not expected for another day or two, but before a 5-day deadline. Now, SADC has released their report on the Zimbabwe elections. More than 6 million voters were registered in these polls, but there were some challenges during the voting process.
Section 52, subsection 1 of the Electoral Act provides that for any election, the ZEC should ensure that every constituency elections officer is provided with polling booths or voting compartments and ballot boxes, and shall provide papers, including ballot papers. 2, before election day, ZEC had assured our mission and other stakeholders that all necessary voting materials, including ballot papers, were available and ready for use. This communication was made in the context of Section 52A, subsection 2 of the Electoral Act, which requires ZEC to provide information on the number of ballot papers and publication of details regarding ballot papers. Based on these two considerations, the subsequent information from ZEC that they did not have adequate ballot papers has the unfortunate effect of creating doubts about the credibility of this process. E, the voters' roll was unavailable at 1% of the polling stations observed and was therefore not displayed outside the polling stations for the convenience of the voters and verification by party candidate agents. F, during the voting period and at 26% of the polling stations observed, not all voters who turned out to vote could vote. The reasons advanced for this included: number 1, voters were identified, but their names were not found on the voters' roll. 2, it was not possible to establish the voter's identity. 3, voters were at the wrong polling station. And 4, voters did not have a national identity card or passport, or due to absence of an official witness confirming an elector's identity.
SABC News reporter Lutendo Bobodi gave us an update on the return of Zimbabweans to South Africa following the elections.
We managed to speak to some of them, and who were telling us that they've been in Zimbabwe, they voted, and now they're coming back. Why? Because they ply their trades in South Africa. You know, the fact that a lot of Zimbabweans ply their trades in South Africa cannot be gainsaid, and they're coming back to vote, to work after casting their vote. And it's safe to say that they're throwing it back, although it's just a few people coming through. Comparatively speaking, on Tuesday we came here and you could see just a few people coming to South Africa, and we believe that at that particular time they were busy with the elections there. We even spoke to business people in South Africa who said the business is down now. They're experiencing a drop in profits because the Zimbabweans who come from Zimbabwe to South Africa and use their taxes are not coming through. But today we're seeing a bit of rise. We spoke to some of taxi operators who are saying that now Zimbabweans are coming to South Africa. Some of them are not just coming to work, but also coming to buy. You know that a lot of them, especially those that live in Beitbridge and places like Doribazimu and Chinyo, they come to South Africa to buy, especially here in Musina. But as I said, now they are coming through after casting their votes.
Well, let's continue here now. The Southern African Development Community Election Observer Mission has released a scathing preliminary report on the Zimbabwe elections. The mission says the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission assured them that it is ready to conduct the polls and all material needed was available. But on the day of the election, some polling stations did not have all the required voting materials. Now, this forced the elections to be extended by another day. SADC head of mission Neves Mumba says Zimbabwe Electoral Management management body fell short of the Zimbabwe constitutional obligations and the Electoral Act, including the SADC principles. Now, let's get analysis. Dr. William Mpofu, a researcher at the Center for Diversity Studies at Wits University, joins me now. Dr. Mpofu, thank you so much for your time. So earlier we heard the heads of SADC and the EU Observer Mission criticizing the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, saying that, their lack of readiness contradicted the country's laws. With that in mind, will SADC once again declare Zimbabwe's elections free and fair, and can they? Dr. Mpofu, please, can you unmute?
Yeah, we wait to hear the verdict. The official communication of the SADC mission in the Zimbabwean election scenario. But given what is on the ground, what we have observed and heard, the credibility of the elections in Zimbabwe has been actually thrown out of the window, in that, as scholars have taught us, elections are a legal event with political outcomes. As it stands, the event, the processes of the elections have been corrupted, in that there have been delays in supplying the necessary resources of the elections, that includes the ballot papers themselves. That alone has technically corrupted the process, and the legal event is therefore faulted, and the political outcomes that emanate from there cannot be credible. Thank you.
And just talking about that credibility, a spotlight then is cast on the role of election observers, in these elections and other elections. I mean, last elections in Zimbabwe, the EU, declared, listed the problems of the elections, with the elections, but the African observers declared them orderly and peaceful.
That is the issue at stake in the African electoral landscape, specifically the Zimbabwean one, in that the voters on the ground and the Africans at large expect these overseer bodies, these monitors and observers, to stand for objectivity and for the truth. It becomes tragic when these evaluation, monitoring and observation bodies tend to side with the incumbents, which is a problem with African multilateral institutions like the African Union and the SADC, that have appeared to be limited in their ability to protect African citizens from their individual and specific governments. And that has led to a problem whereby whenever legitimate avenues of political contestation and competition are closed, Africans end up looking for extra constitutional methods of contesting for and navigating power, like military coups and other methods that are problematic. So we hope that in this case, for the first time ever, SADC and AU are going to come through for Zimbabwe, for Africa, and for democracy.
Dr. Mpofu, while we wait, for the observer missions then to make their final report, and let's talk then about the election results and what we are likely to see. I mean, while we are expecting the final results to be announced next week, Monday, early parliamentary results already suggesting that the main opposition, the Citizens Coalition for Change, is holding ground. Just your analysis on what we are likely to see?
Yeah, we are likely to see that upsurge in the popularity of the political opposition, but the upsurge will be accompanied by resistance and shows of force and shows of fraud from the incumbents. Based on that limitedness of the credibility of the electoral event and electoral process as legal as it is supposed to be, the more the temperatures rise, the more the excitement rises for the possibility of change, the more the resistance from the incumbents is going to be observable and also witnessed. So we wait in fear and in hope that the usual political violence and the usual events of fraud that have historically been demonstrated in the Zimbabwean electoral landscape are not going to appear once again. That is what Africa is looking at, and that is what Africa stands to witness.
Now, Dr. Mpofu, as we, talking about the CCC, just perhaps let's elaborate a little bit further on, the point of the opposition being one party, and the lack of other political competitors, really, to ensure that all the citizens' concerns, and particularly what is happening in the country at the moment in terms of its economic stability is represented. Do you think this could be a route maybe Zimbabweans need to explore in order to expand their political and their leadership structures?
It's not only about Zimbabwe and about Africa. It's actually about the world at large. The future of politics, democratic and electoral politics, is in coalitions. It's important that the Zimbabwean civil society and the political opposition respect the moment in the world where coalitions are the way to go, because political opposition itself must be representative enough, must be diverse enough, and must be inclusive enough. And that entails coalition with minority and smaller so-called political parties. That will help democratically and liberation-wise.
Dr. Mpofu, thank you so much for your analysis this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. Unfortunately, that line was not great. Dr. William Mpofu, a researcher at the Center for Diversity Studies at Wits University, there for us.